Have you ever wondered what it takes to be able to write an entire book series from start to finish, from the conception of the idea all the way through to, let's say, book 3 in a trilogy? Let's find out. Greetings, Cosmic Travelers. My name is J. Fitzpatrick Malden, and I am the author of the Foundry series as well as other character-driven hard science fiction and fantasy novels. And in this video, we're going to be walking through the journey of what it takes to go from, let's say, a short story to the first book in a series, all the way through to book 3, which is coming out here shortly. I know that when I finally finished book 3 and that my wife actually finished reading it, that I was absolutely over the moon. And I kept saying to myself for days, hey, I wrote a book series. And I got to be honest, it felt really, really, really good.
Achievement unlocked.
And so this sounds like a tutorial video, and maybe part of it is going to be, it could be for you. And so of course, I'm going to share some tips and tricks that I did that helped me throughout the journey. But at the same time, I want you to also look at it more from an artistic journey, what it means for a personal development as well. So some of the things that I say today may or may not apply to you. Totally okay, perfectly fine. Everybody's artist journey is different. However, I feel like there are definitely some commonalities in this space. And so, of course, I want to talk about how my life fit into this, how my work fit into this, how having kids. And guys, I have a very busy schedule outside of what I do in my writing and how all of that fit together. So if you are wanting to write your own book series, you've got a great idea and you want to turn that world that has just been rolling around and spinning around in your head for years into words on the page, and then beyond that, into something that other people are actually going to read, enjoy, and then it may be something that touches them, then we've got to do a few things first. Number 1, I am a firm believer that there is no such thing as an aspiring writer. This is one of those things I hear oftentimes in writer circles, that I'm an aspiring writer, You may be an aspiring author, but there are no such things as aspiring writers. So if you have an idea, the first thing that you have to do is you have to get intentional about actually spending the time to work on it. Writing is not something that you just do when your butt is in the seat, like down here in my writing space. Yes, I have a time that I set aside, and for me personally, it is Monday through Friday from 4:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. That is my time to write. Now, when my butt is in the actual seat, yes, I am physically writing out and physically editing. However, throughout the day, I'm actually working on my books, even when I'm doing things completely unconnected. I could be going to get myself coffee. I could be pumping gas. I could be talking to an old friend. I could be going for a walk. My brain is continuing to work through these ideas that I have when it enters what is called the default mode state. And that is a place that most people kind of try to avoid in the world we live in now. There's a phrase that I say sometimes with my friends, and is that boredom is your superpower and distraction is your crutch. And so when you actually allow yourself to be bored, you're giving yourself the opportunity for another part of your brain to activate, which kind of works like your subconscious. And then you are able to work through these ideas and problems. So if you hear that, I write all the time, I'm always writing, I'm always thinking about something, the reality of that is true. When you sit in the seat is when you take all those ideas and you put them on the page. But until then, you have to have the ideas. So you have to first start with, I am going to write, I'm going to be intentional about it, and I'm not going to aspire for this to happen. I'm just going to, bleeping do it. Number 2, after you've got an idea, a basic concept of something that you want to start working on, you need to set aside time. Just like I was saying with being the aspiring author, or rather the aspiring writer, you need to set time and be intentional about it. Like I said, for me, 4:30 to 7 a.m., Monday through Friday. Now you may be wondering, why the heck did you pick that time? I'm not really a morning person. I would never do that. Are you saying I have to get up early? And the reality of this is no. Me personally though, I have kids, I have a family, and I wanted to make sure that I was fair to their time and give them the attention that they deserved during the rest of the time. And so I set aside a specific time I knew that they would be, doing things. And so I get up before they're even awake, while my brain is a complete blank slate, which that time I have set aside and I've built habits to where my brain knows it's time to write. And I come down and I do the writing, and then I go back into the regular flow of my day. I handle everything with the family in the morning, and then of course I go to my normal quote unquote 9 to 5, and then I work through that until I come home in the afternoon, spend time with them, and throughout all this time I am thinking about my stories. I'm writing notes. Sometimes I'm even playing some of what I've written back through a text-to-speech app that I've used for years. It is not AI, by the way, but I think it's AI powered. But the whole point is, I go back through the ideas that I've already looked at. So you have to set aside the time. And then you have to be intentional about that time you set aside and show up. The other career that I work in is a very sales-based career. And I'm going to be honest, guys, it amazes me how many people want something, but then they don't really set aside the intentionality and the time, and they really just don't put in the work. So one thing I want you guys to learn, and you will hear from me, is that life is about embracing the journey. It's not about finding shortcuts. So if you find that you are like, well, I just don't have the time to do this, you've got to take a look at what your priorities are. And the reality of it is, do you want it bad enough? And I'm not talking about like some boomer, like you're not working hard enough kind of thing. I mean, what are your priorities? What are important? And is this something you actually want to try to get better at? Because secret, guys, whether you become a bestseller or not, I believe that everyone who writes becomes a better person, becomes a better communicator, and becomes someone who understands the world around them at a much higher level. So I think writing is amazing, and it is a superpower that all humans possess. You may not be the next Stephen King, but that is okay. You can still become the better version of who you are, and at the end of the day, that's all any of us really can do. Number 3, learn the craft of writing. When I started writing the Foundry series, I've got to be honest, I had no idea if this was going to be a series or not. When I wrote this book, I had the intention of just writing one really good novel. This was about my 6th or 7th novel that I had written. The other ones were okay, but by comparison, they were kind of a dumpster fire. I had a really bad review, or a really critical review rather, that a friend of mine gave me on one of the books that I've never published, and she essentially told me that the book was interesting, well-written, but unsatisfying. And then she gave me some recommendations on how to fix that. Essentially, I came across a book called The Story Grid, was one of the ones that she recommended. And then another one that has helped me much later in my writing career is called Save the Cat Writes a Novel. So if you haven't read either of those, I would highly recommend that you do so. Once I had some new tools under my belt, I approached writing a completely different way. And I wrote the first book in the series as a standalone because, to be honest, I didn't know if I wanted to make a whole series out of it. But at the end of it, I ended up leaving the hook open. And because I left the hook open at the end of it, the basic concept upon which this entire world had been built, then I was able to go, you know what? We can add more books to this series. And that is exactly what we did. Number 4, take really good notes. I wish I had been better at taking notes when I first wrote The Foundry, which is the first book in the series. Reason being is there's a lot of things inside of the hard science fiction space, especially the science portion, that I had to go back and fix in editing that I'm not fully convinced couldn't have been missed. Things like the length of a ship, or a certain speed they travel to a certain place, or a distance between two areas. And this is not necessarily unique to sci-fi, this is unique to all genres, so take really good notes. I built character profiles for all of my main characters, and even some of my side characters. I gave them quirks, I gave them dreams, I gave them hopes and motivations. I had all of this documented. And while those things change over time, which they always do as the story expands, and honestly as we change as human beings, I decided that I was gonna put it there and I would make those changes to the notes at the end. Now, when I was writing the first book, I didn't change the notes that much at the end, and honestly, I wish I'd gone back and revised those a little bit more. However, they ended up being my reference guide. So when I went into book 2, when I went into book 3, so I went into the Transcendence is what the second one is, and the third one, which is the Tempering, I was much better about writing notes. I had a running document I actually kept up the entire time I was writing. I used Microsoft Word, whatever. I had 2 documents up, I'm writing, I have my notes, and every time something significant happened or there was something where I felt like this is a detail somebody would pick out later or I would need later, I just added it to the document in like a rolling script, which helped me out a lot later on for referencing. How long was that ship? Who did they fight? What color of clothes was somebody wearing in that particular scene? I had them in a referenceable place. So keeping track of those sorts of things are very important over the life of a long story. Now, a trilogy is only 3 books, but this gets even bigger when you start moving into the territory of, say, your long-running series, like your 5-book series, your 6-book series, your 10-book, 20-book series. It becomes very important to take really good notes. And those same notes can help you develop plots later on, because you may forget that something happened earlier in the story that you can then yank back later, and then the readers think you're like a freaking genius. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they buried the lead. But it may be that you forgot about something and just kind of discovered it later. Number 5, be sure to pack plenty of supplies, because you're gonna be in this for the long haul. Writing a book series is far more difficult than just writing one book. And yet at the same time, it's way easier. Reason why? Because it's bigger, because it's longer. The whole being able to revisit characters and familiar paths that you've gone down before, this kind of helps and saves you a little bit of time, a lot of time actually on world building. Now, you're gonna go through a lot of different emotional shifts during that time period. You're gonna have some days where you feel like you've got everything locked down and you are the best in the world and you've got this nailed. And there's other days where you're wondering why you even exist on this world. I just want you to know that it is very normal to go through this emotional roller coaster while writing your book. And you have to be able to focus yourself on the end goal, focus yourself on the journey rather than the destination, or always the destination of, say, getting paid. But let's look at the destination of the books are going to be finished. You have to embrace that to be able to make it through. It doesn't hurt to have little desk friends as well. I've got Barrett right here from Final Fantasy, and he's gonna save the planet. And I don't feel like writing this morning, Barrett, and for some reason I've given you a bandana on your head. Let's change that. But Shinra's gonna destroy the world if you don't get up and write. Come on, we've gotta do something about it. That's not a very good Barrett. He's more like this. He kind of sounds like Mr. T. I don't know if that's appropriate or not. Did I say anything about smashing, liking, subscribe, all that? You know the drill. I keep little spaceships nearby too. One more, I've got this little spaceship Lego version I made of the Vasco da Gama from the Foundry. This is the ship that goes all the way out to go make first contact with the Foundry facility. Know that we all have good days. We all have bad days. We all have days that we want to throw our manuscripts in a fire and burn them. We all have plot points that we go, oh crap, I can't unravel this. But there was an amazing piece of advice I read years ago, and I'm not even sure what the author was that wrote this, okay? And essentially what they said was that every book that you write, try to write it better than the last one. But if you go through your book and you know that there is something that isn't quite right, but you can't figure out how to fix it, and you've explored all the options to be able to fix it, then just be okay with it. But if there is something that you know that you could fix, and there is a specific action you could take to fix it, well then fix it. And basically, and of course I absolutely butchered the quote, but basically the idea is, make it the best story that you can that day, and know that it is okay that you're gonna become better. Actually, you wanna become better as they go on. And so there's always a bit of magic in that discovery portion of your first couple of novels that you write, and when you really start to get your voice. But later on, you will 100% be technically better than you were earlier. They say it takes 10,000 hours to mastery, and I don't know if that's fully true or not, but I know that is a great place to start. And as for myself, I'm coming pretty close to my 10,000 hours, which makes me really kind of excited and proud. And so if you need to find ways to reward yourself, to go, I took the actions, I did the things, I had my butt in the seat or whatever, then do those things, because you are going to need to keep the momentum up. There will be times that you want to quit. Case in point, and I am not picking on these authors, we have authors out there like George R.R. Martin, who has never written the last book of Game of Thrones. Or in the fantasy space, again, we have Patrick Rothfuss, who there is a not released third book of The Name of the Wind or the Kingkiller Chronicles that we may or may not ever see. I know these are polarizing topics to pull up in this point, and I'm not making fun of either of those authors. but we can lose our momentum. And if you lose your momentum, then you may never finish what could have ended up being your life's work. In that same vein, there's some really simple tools that can help keep you on track so that you can see what works and what doesn't, how much progress you're making. As for me, I actually use, this is totally analog, but I use a paper calendar. I print these out every single year, and I basically check off the mornings that I write and what I was working on. Part of this developed with, I wanted to see how quickly I wrote through chapters, how quickly I wrote through segments. And so I just started writing like the name of a book and like the chapter I was on, or if I was editing or whatever. And all of this came through the fact that I wanted to find out how many books I could write in a year. And I always tell myself I can write about one book in a year. Truth is, it's probably about like 0.75 books. Actually, it's probably, I can write a book in a year and I can edit most of that book in a year is really what it comes down to. Because for me, editing is where I get caught in an endless loop. First draft doesn't take that long. But the editing process, because I really want to create a magical and amazing world, does end up being a problem. And so you have to work out what that process looks like for you. And the only way you're going to do it is through the blood, sweat, and tears of sitting down there and struggling through it. I hate to tell you there's no life hacks in this space. This is something you just have to do. Number 6, and I have already mentioned this several times in this. Guys, listen to me here. Look at me in the eyes. I'm gonna lean in a little bit here so you get really, really, really close. You have to fall in love with the journey. If you don't fall in love with the journey of writing, there's no point to you starting this. I hate to tell you guys, for any of you who may have been like me, that were looking for an easy way to get out of your 9-to-5 and to escape a really crappy job situation you were in, writing is not it. I'm not saying that you can't end up becoming the next, Brandon Sanderson, Rebecca Yarros, Matt Dinniman, any of these who are having huge success in the market right now. I'm not saying that you can't become them, but what I am saying is you gotta put food on the table. And this may be something in your life that feeds your soul more than your bank account. And that is okay. There are plenty of creatives that I'm very close with in my personal life who are some of the most amazing artists I've ever seen that have never been able to have commercial success. But what I realized, and what they realized as well, is as soon as they fell in love with the journey of the creation, the journey of making, that even if they never made money at it, that it changed the way that they showed up in their professional career, and it changed the way they showed up in relationships. And honestly, it gave them something worth living for. And so if you're on the fence about writing your first novel or writing your next novel or continuing on this, just go do it. Do it. Do it. The things. Or finish this. I don't know. Up to you. Finish it if you want. But until next time, safe journeys, Cosmic Traveler. We'll see you soon.
Have you ever dreamed of touching stars? Milo, you need to raise the fighters screamed ahead of Esteban's. I, the Hell, am the Foundry. I protect life. Damn, Esteban mumbled. Take that bastard down.